Carlos here. Welcome to the Anatomy of a Strategy podcast. This week we welcome Erica M. There's a long list of accomplishments that this amazing woman has done, but I'm not going to spend any more time. Tara gets right into it.
So we are here today sitting with Erica M. For those of you who have been living on another planet and do not know who Erica M is, here is a bio I'm going to read out because there's so much I don't want to miss anything. Erica M is one of Canada's most recognized personalities, having started her career in the mid-'80s as the voice of her generation on MuchMusic. That's when I first discovered her myself. She founded and was editor-in-chief of YummyMummyClub.ca, now involved into YMC.ca, one of the first and most influential digital properties for Canadian moms. Her multimedia resume includes acting, award-winning songwriting, playwright, author, journalist, and most importantly, the Yummy Mummy Club. She's a pioneer of social engagement and branded content, and now heads Ehm and Co, a digital marketing agency powered by proprietary technology, insight analysis, expertise, and experience to build better and more authentic consumer experiences and online campaigns that resonate with women. Can't wait to talk about that. And your client roster includes CIBC, some big ones here, Loblaws, Air Canada, Dempster's, H&M, Braun, TD Bank, and many other internationally widely recognized brands. Okay, now that everybody is as excited as I am to have you in the studio, welcome, Erica.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm equally excited because you are one of the few people, I believe, who approaches social media in the same way that I do, which is that ability to use your heart and connect it to your head, but that the heart does play a role. And I feel like
huge
in these, well, we can talk about it later, but I do feel like there's a disconnect in the world of social media that's happening now. Yeah. We'll talk about that.
Yes, absolutely. And I can't wait to dive into that. But I want to go back in time. Because
only we will get that reference.
Yeah, it's true. You probably interviewed Mike Myers many times back in the day.
I didn't interview him, but we sort of hung out because he was, Christopher Ward was one of the other on-air people, and they were best friends.
Right.
So Mike used to come to the studios a lot before he was super famous. And in fact, he invented the Wayne's World character on City Limits, which was the MuchMusic late night show.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. Oh, love these little facts. So as Erica just said, that do-do-do-do-do-do comes from the dream sequencing on Wayne's World, was sort of iconic back in the day. This whole heart and head trailblazing, you've done this even from before MuchMusic. We came across a little reference to the fact that you started a column in high school called Erica's Teen Scene Club. You were building community, I guess, around...
Yeah, I lived in a small town called Hudson, Quebec, and I had to write, and I had to, when I say had to, I mean I was compelled to...
How old were you?
I was 14, 15.
Wow.
I was compelled to sort of be the voice of my school, and I used to write a weekly column, Erica's Teen Scene, about what was happening in the community of kids, both the negative and the positive. And my mom still remembers an article I wrote calling out the teachers because they went on strike. And I lived in the country. So when teachers go on strike, and they were working to rule, so there were all the extracurricular activities were canceled, which meant that none of the kids had anything to do after school. And so I wrote about this. I wrote a scathing article about it.
That's hilarious. That's
and
amazing.
In fact, it was I was a shit disturber in Hudson, Quebec. I mean, I was getting angry letters to the editor. Teachers and parents were complaining about this article, and I thought, wow.
Okay, so where were you publishing this? Because
this is in the
before the internet, by the way.
Oh yeah, this is the Hudson Gazette, which was like a 12-page local community newspaper.
So how did you get a column in a local newspaper as a 14-year-old? Well, I mean, I probably shouldn't ask. You are.
No, it is actually the question to ask because the answer that I'm going to give you is the same answer to how I got my first job working at a radio station when I was 16 years old in Montreal. I was the coolest kid at Marianopolis College because I was working at Shom FM, which is like
Right.
Q107, when I was 16 years old. And it's the same answer I'll give you, how I got my job answering the phones at City TV. It's the same thing. I asked.
Huh. Well, that seems really simple. It's got to be more than that.
Not really.
No.
I went to the people at the radio station, but that's a different story, but at the community newspaper, and I walked in, I said, I would like to write an article, a weekly column on behalf of the kids. And they said, oh, that's a good idea. Sure.
Very cool.
So it really does work.
yeah.
It really does. I mean, you have to have the ammunition to back up your
Right.
ask. It needs to make sense. It needs to be sort of a rational ask.
Yeah.
But, you know, I've been
And
on,
you need to follow through.
and you absolutely have to follow through. So I've been speaking a lot lately, as you know. It's become more and more important to me to hit the road and get into boardrooms and arenas and wherever people are really who need to be inspired to reinvent or invent. And one of the things that I talk about all the time is this magical ability that we all have to ask for what we want. But few of us are given the tools for it. So I happen to have had a mother and a father really who were very proactive and taught my sister and I to go for it and to not let obstacles get in our way. And that's why I'm sitting here today.
Yeah, and those tools, like a lot of people say confidence, but that doesn't just come from.
No, there is something called a success mindset or an open
Right.
mindset. And that is, in fact, studies show that it's a learned ability. So I learned it because I had parents who modeled it and forced us to adopt it. A lot of kids don't have what I have. And so you don't learn it. It doesn't come naturally. So you need people like me and you to point it out, to make it really clear as to what it is, what it looks like, and how you can do it and implement it in your life every day. This conversation isn't going where you thought it would it?
No, but that's all right. I mean, hell, I think this is very valuable.
Well, it's how you
conversation too.
become a trailblazer. That is what a trailblazer is having an idea and then having the courage and the tenacity to ask other people to do what it is that you want. And when they say no, to ask again in a different way until you get the answer you want.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I've always just thought it's because I was really stubborn.
Well, that's part of it. Carlos, do you want to add to that?
Well, I have to agree because I wasn't raised. I was raised with very passive parents who sort of didn't really instill that in me. And they did amazing work, but at the same time, it just wasn't part of our culture to be outgoing. And I've always been attracted to people who are that way, right? And sort of the way where and to me, I use that as a way to learn because it's sort of something I wanted to do myself. But
sitting across from the two of you, I can see the synchronicity between the two of you because you're perhaps a little quieter and analytical, and Tara is much more outgoing, although also very analytical. But you balance each other because you only can have one big mouth in the family. In my family, it's hard because there's two of them, so it's hard.
Yeah. Two of them, you and
my husband.
Your husband? Oh,
who
your
is an
husband's-
entrepreneur. Oh, yeah.
Oh boy, I can imagine. Well, we'll save that for another conversation, but it sounds fascinating. So one of the things that made me fall in love with you, beyond, of course, your trailblazerness, was that you were so approachable. For anybody who ever watched the early days of, if you're in the U.S., MTV or MuchMusic.
I was the Martha Quinn of MTV.
There
that's
you
how,
go.
That's how people sort of describe me to people.
Or maybe she was the Erica M of...
True. Now we're connected on Twitter. Life is crazy.
That's so crazy. Well, it was long before YouTube, right? And so anything that you saw on TV and the movies, everybody was so polished and perfect. And you came along, like your hair kind of flowing and undone. You weren't makeup to the nines. In fact, I think some days you were just like maybe like a little powder and just showing up, and you were just so approachable. Was this part of also your personality that was taught to you, that you would come in and you would just be like, I'm okay with being myself, people are going to respond to that. And how did you get that past the powers that be that were creating the early days of Much?
Well, I think, first of all, I've always been an outsider. I've never fit in anywhere. I'm the person who, when I used to DJ in clubs when I was like 18, I was the one playing the records. I wasn't on the dance floor dancing. It didn't really matter what I looked like. It mattered what I did. And I feel like on MuchMusic, for me, it was about what I said, not how I looked. Now, a lot of people may say, well, you were dressed up, or I thought that my job was to create an entertaining visual persona. So I used to wear kooky clothes and I had a hat collection that I created, but I was unabashedly myself because who else would I try and be? And I feel like so many people try to be something that they're not, and then it's like telling a lie. You get caught. So it's way easier to just be you and be loud and proud about who you are. I also feel like I have very strong values, and I try and live them in my life no matter where. So I always treated people with ultimate respect, and because really you never know where people will be, and in fact it worked for me because in the crew at MuchMusic, I was the on-air person, but we were all pretty much treated like no one cared anyway in our office, which was great. So our egos never really got out of hand. But there were some people who had a bit more attitude than others. But a lot of the people who were, like, in quotations, in the crew, who have gone on to have very successful, important roles, those people still hire me because I was a normal, nice person, hardworking person back then. I believed that every day I had to do my research. When you would see me doing, 6-hour live shifts, introducing videos, there was no script, there was no director, there was no producer. There was a floor director, like you're on in 5, 4, 3, 2, but I am the one who came up with everything that I was going to say. So
you did all the research.
I did all the research.
Put together questions. Wow.
And when I had to interview an act, I had to sit beside them or in front of them, across from them, and I was able to have a conversation with them because the questions that I was asking were the ones that I genuinely wanted to know, or I genuinely thought my audience wanted to know, because I was the voice of the audience. And when I was hired by Moses, I think that the reason why he hired me is because I was truly passionate. I was authentically the person that you saw behind camera and in front of the camera. Moses Znaimer was the founder of City TV. I believe his version of television was a precursor of social media. So when we would do interviews with all the bands at MuchMusic, he created, first of all, an open space studio, which was the first time that's ever happened. And he also built a huge glass window so the fans could watch the interviews, and it opened.
I remember it being open and people being like, hey, look at me.
That's right. And so his vision was to create an opportunity for the fans to connect, to really connect with, when I say the stars, I don't mean the MuchMusic people, although that was one of the things, but to actually interact with the rock stars. So he sort of started to democratize media. And that was, he invented this thing called Speaker's Corner.
I love Speaker's
where you would
Corner.
go to the corner of the building, and there was a recording Queen and John. You can go in there, and it was like a photo booth, but it was video. And then they would take all these crazy videos that weirdos off the street, like bare naked ladies, would come in and have their rant, and they would edit them, and they would make TV out of it. That's crowdsourcing. That's
for sure.
Brilliant.
Totally.
And I believe that one of the reasons why I think that I have been a trailblazer is that I grew up with this mentality that those in the media are no more important than those on the other end of the media, that it's a relationship. That was Moses's incredible gift of understanding how to build community using relationship and authenticity. And that continues to be the cornerstone of everything that I believe.
Well, here's a little funny thing. I begged and pleaded and cried and gnashed my teeth and threw temper tantrums to my parents that we needed to travel to Toronto and, go to Toronto and see Toronto. My parents are, God love them, they're Albertans. They do not like Toronto. So they said no many times over, and I kept hammering on it. But the only reason that I wanted to go to Toronto was to actually go to Speaker's Corner and have my shot. It never happened, because by the time I finally came to Toronto, I think I was 19, 20. And by that time, it was gone.
Well, it's fascinating to see how a large organization who doesn't understand the concept of authenticity and relationship decimated something that was pretty spectacular. When CTV or Bell took over MuchMusic, they immediately started hiring on-air hosts who looked good but didn't necessarily have any sort of true connection to the music. They started giving them scripts.
Way more
it just imploded. Yeah. And that was at the exact same time that YouTube was just launching, where anybody who was passionate had a voice. And so there, as a consumer or as a music fan, where are you going to go? Yeah. To the one who is all fake and bullshit, or to this really cool kid down the street who's got it going on, who has great stories and is so passionate and is down to earth just like me, just like they are?
Yeah.
That's why YouTube took off. Yeah. And that's why Moses was a genius, because he understood that. People wanted to see themselves on TV. People still want to see themselves, especially now when people own the media now.
Oh, for sure. Well, it's this thing that, and I think the media doesn't even realize.
Oh, they don't. They're fighting. They're still fighting it.
It's so crazy.
I think it's one of the reasons why we're seeing the chaos right now nowadays. Right, is the media started realizing how they've lost that connection, and they're blaming the platforms, but it's like, no, it's essentially
you had the
fault.
Opportunity to do it. And there's a really interesting book, I think it's called The Greenhouse Approach. Chitra Anand, do you know Chitra?
I know the name.
She just wrote this really interesting book speaking about how large corporations, but also small businesses, are missing out because they're making the squeaky wheel quiet. So those who work in businesses, who are the dissenters, the ones who see the problems with the business, the ones who are sort of the emperor's new clothes, who points out those problems in businesses, are shut down. And that's what happened in broadcasting. There was a lot of people like myself going to these broadcast meetings when I started YMC saying, listen, I see a great opportunity to create a digital property in conjunction with broadcast, and we can marry the two. And they're like, no, I don't understand what you're talking about. Get out. And that's what happens is the people who own these large companies don't understand the new wave of media. And so they need to keep their jobs.
Right.
So they have to kick out anybody who is conceptualizing ideas that they can't understand.
Right.
So
it's threatening.
It's completely threatening, and that's why the media is falling apart.
Yeah. No, I mean,
it is.
And this is a wonderful segue into you talking about YMC. So it's 2006 that Yummy Mummy Club was launched to the public, right? Or started?
In 2003... I started a TV show with Life Network called Yummy Mummy.
Okay.
I was pregnant with my second at the time. I was very frustrated because I feel like everyone is worried about the kids. How's your son? How's your daughter? I'm dying over here.
Yeah.
Nobody is looking at me and saying, is the mom okay? So like postpartum, etc. That was never discussed. Mm-hmm. And supporting a mom was secondary to making sure that the child had everything that the child needed. Right. But if you don't have a healthy, mentally and physically healthy mother, the child will not thrive.
Yeah.
So I started this TV show called Yummy Mummy, which I pitched to Life Network. The concept being someone needs to talk about the realities, both positive and negative, about being a mom, and make a show for moms, not about parenting, but the act of being a mother and the experience of being a mother. So I did that for 2.5 years.
Now, this seems like very like, it seems like, well, duh, of course now. But at that time, it probably wasn't.
No, it wasn't. That was, again, and I think it's mostly because men run media. And so they don't understand how huge of a life-changing experience it is for women like you and I, especially who are self-motivated and independent, and then you have a baby that completely destroys everything in your life. Yeah. And you have to, and then you start again. Yeah. And you start again in a different way. That's okay. Yeah. But nobody was talking about it. Everybody was just saying, "Oh, motherhood is so beautiful." Oh my God, that's bullshit. Yeah. Somebody had to say that's bullshit. Yeah. And that way it was out in the open. Yeah. The TV show ran for 2 years and a bit. It was syndicated around the world with Discovery Health. And then when the show finished production, I was just getting into it. I was finding other like-minded women who were also having a hard time, surviving and getting through motherhood. And so I started a little tiny website. It was called Yummy Mummy Club because I wanted it to somehow, I wanted it to be, again, not just me.
Like a beacon for other women like you.
A platform. I don't think there was even a word for that. It wasn't a platform. It was just a place.
Before they said internet community or anything.
No, it was a place where women can celebrate and commiserate the roller coaster ride of motherhood. That's what it was. It was a place. A virtual place. Yeah. A meeting place. And
Before Facebook.
Yeah.
Before Twitter.
Yeah.
Before any of the big platforms that we know today.
And so I built it myself. And I wrote 300 articles until one day I went, I really should pay attention to my children. So I hired someone named Karen who through Craigslist. Wow. And Karen helped me start building the pages because I was, running it. I was writing all of it and building it and doing the content. It was a company called Your Web Department.
Okay.
Wow. It was a little template that...
like WordPress would be today.
Way before WordPress.
Yeah.
So and in fact, it was on ericaM.com. And I said to the guys, hey, could I do a little line that's called Yummy Mummy Club? And he said, sure. And so if you look in the nav, on the side nav, it would be Yummy Mummy Club, and you click on it and like 300 pages would drop down. So at that point, I realized that I had to build an actual website. And so I built it on Drupal. Okay. And it was super fancy. And I, at that point, had a team of 3. And when I got on Twitter, someone on Facebook who I didn't know told me to go on Twitter. I love social media.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is this thing? He goes, and he said, just go. And within a month, it was the only place I wanted to be. Yeah. I didn't even want to talk to anybody in real life. I used to sneak up to my attic where my office was, but not anymore because at the time it was my happy place where it was self-policed, where people were so kind, where people were inclusive. It was like a happy cocktail party.
Yeah. We called it I called it my worldwide water cooler.
But happy.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's where my business at that point was about maybe 2 years old. YMC was about 2 years old. And my traffic jumped 30% 3 months into being on Twitter. From there on, I hired my entire staff through Twitter. So I didn't meet most of my staff for at least a year. And that was
all virtual.
It was all virtual. And it was a very magical time. It was a very special time.
Yeah, I have a video that I made a couple of years back, the Twitter that I used to know, where I'm looking very sad. And it talks about how I really miss those days where, like, I would be able to be traveling somewhere, anywhere in the world, like, some Slovenia or whatever, I tweet, and all of a sudden people locally would be like, oh, you need to go here and here, and oh, maybe do you have time for dinner? We'd love to take you for dinner and talk. I was like, I would meet people wherever I went just from tweeting.
Exactly my experience.
And it doesn't happen anymore.
My first 2, in quotation marks, bloggers from YMC, I was doing a talk in Ottawa. So I tweeted out, hey, I'm going to be in Ottawa. Does anyone want to come for a tweet up?
I love tweet up.
2 people showed up, Kelly Daisy and Candace Derricks, and they both ended up being one of my first writers. And Candace worked for me until last year. And she's a bit of a social media superstar to this day. I think part of what makes me really happy is not just that my company has become very successful, a lucrative business, etc., but also I've launched the careers of a few hundred women.
Amazing.
So that is something that still bonds us till today. I just got an email from someone who used to write for me saying, Erica, I miss you so much. I think I want to write a book now because of my time working for you. Yeah, I get it every day. It's really, it's a special thing. Twitter now is full of shit.
Oh, totally.
And it's angry and ugly. And really, it's like pre-Trump and post-Trump. And he gave people permission to be horrid.
Yeah.
Hide and horrid.
Yeah.
Right? And so I use Twitter much differently now.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yummy Mummy Club became YMC.ca. It became actually like a platform. Well, I mean, I guess you'd call it influencer, but you were looking at it very differently than what we see in, once again, another shitty dumpster fire, which is influencer marketing. But you saw it more as like a good place for women to connect and then also share and make some money doing this sort of work too.
What I did was I built this platform and then I sourced talented women who each had their own niche. So I had a woman mechanic, I had a female doctor, I had a naturopath, I had a wellness person, I had a dietitian, I had a mom who had 6 kids, so she was sort of the advice person. I had a humorist, I had a poet, there was at least 50, a book writer, they all had their different niche, and they all could post on the website whenever they wanted. And then my editor would just clean up their writing and then make it go live. We had so much content. But what we also did that I think was pretty spectacular was everybody then became a brand ambassador for YMC. So especially in Twitter, because that was and some of it on Facebook, but really it was on Twitter where we would have these incredible conversations with like 50 to 100 people joining in, because everybody was so, when I say connected, I mean emotionally connected.
Yeah.
We were a tribe of smart, talented women who were looking for creative outlet and conversation. And then what happened was people saw this connection and support, and more women who were starting their own blogs wanted to participate. So I started the YMC network. I would hire these women to start. When I was working with brands, I came up with this idea of branded content. So that was like 13 years ago, which was
before anybody was talking
way
about that
before
stuff.
that. And then I had all these amazingly talented women, but no more room on my website to give them their blogs. So we created the YMC network, and we had at one point 600 women on the network, all with their own blog and social handles, and we would post opportunities in a private Facebook group, and people had to email us and say, why is this opportunity right for you? So it wasn't like today, which is that bullshit automation where you just push a button. You cannot automate authenticity.
No.
And that is the demise of influencer marketing. Take my word for it. That will be the end of it.
Just this week, the news has something about some programmer who created a bot for Instagram just to get followers. So like that sort of ecosystem is like on the edge of being completely.
And there was the fake influencers, right? The people that were pretending that they had brand deals, but then they didn't, just so that they'd get brand deals.
It's the money. You know how Cyndi Lauper sings "Money changes everything." It did. When people sort of smelt out that there was money, people who don't have a good understanding of the true meaning of what influence is started to appropriate the industry by offering cheaper access to influencers. And then on the other end, there's influencers who are overcharging. So it's this messy world now where I don't blame brands for being skeptical. I know there's people like you who understand it. I know that my company understands it. It's no longer a core piece of our business because I don't want to compete with a bot. That's not, I don't want to say I can't compete financially with an algorithmic pick of 57 shitty influencers. I would say use 6 people and look at these amazing, talented creators and work with them in a meaningful way for a year.
Yeah, don't just send them here. You need to tweet this on this day at this time, and you need to put this, message in this video at this time. Like that's how influencer marketing became.
But I understand the media's reticence to do this because, like publishing and broadcasting, the media and advertisers, marketing, are used to buying the property and buying an ad in a newspaper, buying an ad commercial on TV, creating it, paying for it, and pushing it out.
Right. They control it.
They absolutely control it. So they're trying to use that same philosophy on influencers, which is impossible because that is personal.
Yeah.
That is a personal take on people's approach to connecting with their audience. Yeah. You can't mandate that.
Well, and true influence comes from the trust that you build with your audience.
So brands are asking influencers to break the trust for them.
Yeah.
Therefore, leaving these influencers, if they choose to do so, with nothing.
Yeah.
But that's been the DNA of brand marketing, right? And I want to say, like, the problem has always been the education of it. The agencies who just want a quick dollar, let's spend this amount of money as fast as possible so that we can make those commissions and all that stuff. We don't ask too many questions. And, we want to spend $1 million for this influencer? Great, we'll do it, right? Is it the right influencer? We don't know, right?
Look at their numbers. Oh, they're
no number. Oh, that'll say everything. Their numbers,
exactly, right?
Yeah.
And we're definitely approaching this scene in a much more careful way with research and actually vetting people. And
shocking.
Yeah, exactly, right. As opposed to just like the influencer.
Like the idea of giving someone who you don't know the permission to talk about your brand without vetting them is, to me, a potential PR disaster.
Yeah.
We're seeing it.
Of course
like
you're seeing it
these days.
Of
right?
course you're seeing it.
Right.
But if you're looking for someone with numbers who's a lunatic, but they have great numbers and honestly great engagement because they're a lunatic, they will be a lunatic with your brand as well. If you're okay with that, go for it. If you're not okay with it, be very careful.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of like my rant when it comes to this, right?
Okay, you rant. Go ahead.
Go for your rant.
It's making the audience just too easy and too low value.
Yeah.
Right? You think about the communities that you've built, that we've been part of, right? And how the platforms, and I'm not going to blame one specific platform because they all have their own problems.
It's not the platform; it's how you use it. It's just a tool.
No. Like
the platforms
you're
do
right.
make certain decisions.
The platforms, you think about the algorithms. Algorithms push it so that they almost create audience, right? You think of like the communities that we had before, the message boards and all that stuff. They were tight.
Yes.
And highly engaged. They were small. They didn't need to broadcast as much. And now it's like when you create a community, all of a sudden it needs to be broadcasted, and it brings
millions and billions.
It brings in the people that you don't want to be in, right? That's why when Twitter was young, it was great. When there's everybody in it, it's not as great. I focus a lot on YouTube, but I still see pockets of it on YouTube where if you're focused on a specific, very narrow type of content, you curate that audience, you start getting ridiculous engagement, super high value.
But you're not going to get the numbers that these brands
that's like,
want.
For example, I started a private Facebook group for parents of teens because that's my personal hell right now. So I wanted, again, just like YMC, when I was first having my kids, I wanted to recreate it in a different way. And it has to be different because when I launched YMC, we all could bitch about our kids publicly and they'd never know because they were babies and no one understood about our footprint, our digital footprint. Yeah. Today, especially for that demographic, parents of teens who need a safe place to talk, it needs to be private. Yeah. That means I vet every single person who's in that group. I think there's 1,200 people right now. I vetted every single person in there, and they're all parents of teens or tweens. Yeah. And we're having some pretty heavy conversations in there, and it's real. Yeah. It's a real group. And that value for a brand to go in that room is so much higher than a gun, like what is it called? Like a shot, like a
shotgun.
like
Shotgun, yeah.
or where you just throw
Buckshot.
out buckshot,
Yeah.
where you don't know where
Spray
you're
and
going to
spray.
hit.
Spray and pray.
Right,
pray.
spray and pray. This one is a bullseye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we have all signed up. We all said we are in the same place
Yeah.
psychographically, and we are all probably needing the same kind of help and services.
Yeah. You can see this, not only Facebook groups. Facebook groups has been, I think, for a lot of people, the only reason why they might even stay on Facebook
True.
these days.
100%.
And it's the only reason I ever go back to Facebook. Otherwise, I avoid everything else. But also, like, the growth of Slack and now Discord as well. So there are these sort of private conversation rooms.
I was just saying this morning, because I'm always paying attention to the latest app and stuff like that. And I saw the app was launching this interesting app in around the world of podcasting. And the two profiles that you can follow is their Twitter profile and join their Slack. That's it.
And it's they're
Wow.
creating, so rather than say, go follow my Twitter or in the sort of the public spaces, they're
Curating.
You're curating their audience, which I hope that is going to start to become the norm rather than grow.
It's a reaction to the horrors of what's going on Twitter and Facebook.
Yeah.
I feel it less on Facebook, to be honest. I feel like Facebook has been much more vigilant in overtly trying to shut down horrible stuff, more so than Twitter. I found that only now is Twitter starting to even try to shut it down. They let it breed.
Oh yeah,
Like,
Dorsey
it's-
was open about his like wanting to not get involved,
Which
and
is
just,
so
like,
wrong, because it is a private business.
Yep.
They own it. That's their living room. And look who they're inviting in. Look
yeah.
at what kind of conversations they let happen there, are letting happen there.
Well, it's like
Kick people off. If you kick some people off, more people will come to your party.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the whole. I mean, the analogy I give is like you have a public pool. Like if there's people
Shitting
peeing
in
the
it.
pool,
Say it,
you got
shitting.
shitting in it. That you kick
Yeah.
them out of the pool because otherwise nobody, like
That's
only
right.
people that want to shit in the pool and swim in shit will be there in the pool.
You better
So-
use this clip as the promo clip.
So I know that you've already like given a little bit of this, but I would love to hear your rant. If you could sit down with Jack Dorsey, with Mark and crew, Cheryl from Facebook, if you could sit down, you're an OG, you've been around, you've seen the rise and fall, you've seen the worst and the best. If you could sit down with them and give them advice, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think we talked about it. I think this is true for every marketer and every platform, is to create a safe place for people to have authentic conversations and relationships. And that includes brands, because brands can have a lot to offer. Brands can create amazing content and provide services and insights for their end user. They need to be part of the party if they do it right, if they don't just push their messaging. But if someone has something valuable to offer, I'll invite them to the party. And I watch that with my audience, with moms.
Yeah.
They're not offended when they're given branded content that is useful for them or that reflects who they are. So I think that right now, the world of social media has only negative connotations. My daughter is on Instagram. The horror of the fake world of Instagram and the people buying fake followers and all of that. It's how do you strip away all of the bullshit? I'm using a lot of bullshit, but I do feel like that's part of the problem, is that as soon as money became a very real thing with social media, it got ugly. And I find it fascinating that you're saying that networks like Slack and these private platforms are starting to sprout out. And I think every reaction or every action has a reaction. And I think we're seeing that reaction right now, where people are leaving Facebook on principle, just on principle. So I think that shareholders shouldn't decide or define the future of your business. I think that the future of the business has to come from doing the right thing and the shareholders will eventually benefit. But I think right now, a lot of these companies are short-sighted in how they're appeasing their shareholders by doing what is easy or easiest or less offensive, or something like that, as opposed to actually calling a spade and doing it and making a difference and shutting down the horrors that we're seeing now in social media. I don't even know, like, all the bots and the Russia and all this. Like, they can stop it.
Yeah.
But there's money that they're making.
Yeah.
But they're going to take that money and their business is going to go eventually.
Thinking.
It's so short term.
Yeah.
Like I said, also to marketers, you can't automate authenticity. And if you want to work and create relationships or sell your products on social media, that's relationship marketing.
Yep.
And you need to talk with people, not at them. And don't treat your audience like they're stupid, because they can tell. And don't go the lowest common denominator.
Yeah. So that actually takes us beautifully into what you're doing now with Ehm and Co.
Well, actually, what I'm doing now with Ehm and Co is stepping away from running the company.
Yeah.
I did this for 13 years, and I was at MuchMusic for 13 years. So it seems like I have a 13-year shelf life in terms of being actively involved in something. So I found people who are way smarter than me to take over the day-to-day operations at Ehm and Co. And they're also more adept at handling the new challenges of technology, et cetera. Because I'm not a technology person. I'm more of a relationship, big picture, creativity thinking. So I share my insights and my sort of institutional knowledge of marketing and social media, but then there's the next generation of super smart people who have skills that I don't have. So Ehm and Co really is a digital marketing agency. We work with other agencies and we work directly with client. The idea is to create compelling ways to connect brands with women. It's as simple as that, using authenticity. And when I say using authenticity is coming up with really fun, relevant ways to connect with moms in a way that they will respond to and engage with. The technology piece is huge because, as you know, nothing stays the same. So the world is changing very quickly. And creatively, like, have some fun and do something different that stands out. So
that means something.
And a lot of brands won't do that, by the way. Well, no one will. That's why everybody is the same. But there are a few. So, for example, can I tell you, do we have time?
Yeah, please.
Okay.
Let me tell you about, sit and talk all day.
Let me tell you about something that, to me, has been game-changing.
Okay.
I got a tweet about 5 years ago from a woman who said, "Hi, I'm a psychologist living in Halifax. I have 4 kids. I work with pediatric pain. I have an idea." So I said, "Okay, I'm happy to hear." She says, "Well, I'll come to Toronto if you want." I was like, "Yeah, sure." Because everybody talks big, but very rarely do people follow through. Oh, no, she came to Toronto and she sat me down and she said, "I'm a pediatric pain researcher with Dalhousie in Halifax. And there is a problem with researchers where it takes 17 years for the research to trickle down to the end users."
Wow.
In her case, that would be parents. She said, "I want to change that trajectory. I would like you to treat pain like you treat one of your clients, like you treat, TD Bank or whatever. And I want you to help me tell the story of pain to parents, because we have a huge audience of parents." So we put together a government grant for something called knowledge translation or knowledge mobilization, which is the academic word for a marketing campaign.
We're a knowledge mobilization agency.
Well, you really, when you think about it, right, that's what you are.
Yeah.
And the government's CIHR, the Canadian Institutes of Health Research, funded it. And it was a fascinating experience because suddenly the academics were partnering with a marketing company and a creative agency. And it was probably the most compelling thing that I've ever worked on and that Dr. Chambers has ever worked on. it was such a success that it's won almost every award in the world of academia and health. It's won marketing awards on our end as well. New York Times has written about it. Millions of impressions for pediatric pain. Could you imagine?
So, like, the impressions came through people telling them their stories. How was it executed?
It was a full 360 campaign. So we created a whole bunch of content that was written by moms who were experiencing pain, but we also put together a panel of scientists and a panel of parents to vet the content. So it was all evidence-based. So every bit of information was actual research and academically approved. And then it was approved by parents to ensure that they understood the points that we were making in order to treat pain, but also to get a sense of, is this a compelling story?
Right.
So a good example, and we did videos, we did content, we did sort of branded images. So an image can tell an entire story if you do it right.
For sure.
Sort of like memes, that kind of thing. Bunch of Twitter parties. And those were important because Twitter let us use their facility. And we actually had a party where we brought academic researchers, presidents of hospitals, presidents of universities, all in the research space, and then children's health. And then we brought a whole bunch of influencers and creators and marketers in one huge room at Twitter.
Amazing.
And that was like a physical manifestation of what that program was, a coming together of two worlds to serve parents.
Amazing.
So I'm working on another project like that, which will be more universal. And again, Dr. Chambers and I are partners, and we've since been nominated for a Governor General's Award of Innovation. So hopefully they'll pick us,
Yes.
because the innovation is the smashing together of two worlds that you wouldn't otherwise put together. Because, there is so much power in partnerships where you find people who don't have your skills, and together you're better.
Yeah, I mean, it's not nearly as beautiful and world-changing, but we always say we love working with boring companies or boring content because we love being able to take something that's really necessary. People need that information, but it's confusing and it's written with jargon and like it's very inaccessible. We love to make it accessible for the audience. And it sounds, I'm sure you got a ton of like great feedback from the audience.
Yeah,
too.
and literally helping treat children's pain. It's changing people's lives.
Fantastic. So that's what you're working on.
Well, that's one of the things.
The next thing that you're working on.
That's one of the things. I'm trying to get it up. Like I'm now back to being an entrepreneur. Ehm and Co is running. It's still my company. I'm involved on a very sort of limited basis. I'm trying to build this next project with the researchers. I'm traveling a lot. I'm spreading the word about inspiring women and entrepreneurs to make whatever it is that they're working on happen, that success mindset and how to, really what I call it, put on a bold face and get what you want. So that's really important to me. And of course, raising a couple of teens. Help me.
Yeah, that's a...
You've been there, I know.
Yeah, it's exactly. We were talking about this beforehand. We won't go into that area. This has been like super enlightening. I'm sure that everybody who's listening to this is like, I need to know more about this person. I need to follow her everywhere.
Yes, you do.
Where can they do that?
Aside from coming to my living room, where I work in my pajamas often, I can be found at my website, which is ericaM.com.
And M is spelled EHM, if you didn't read the title on the podcast.
And I'm on Twitter, ericaM.com. And I'm on LinkedIn, ericaM.com. And I'm on Instagram, ericaM.com. It's so crazy that the number of, I was going to call them messages that I get. I never know which platform. I go, someone just reached out to me. Which one was? It was LinkedIn. I have to go back and find that comment. Like, I wish that there was one place. Can someone please invent
like
something?
One message, like bucket.
Where all your DMs go. It would make sense, wouldn't it?
That's been the thing that everybody's been trying to do for
years. But then somebody owns it. Yeah, there was actually an open source project many years ago, but we won't go into that. Well, but there we go. Call to action. Maybe somebody that sees you speak can take that up, create it. It would be actually a great open source project because then nobody owns it and It's still centralized.
Yeah, that's the thing. You have to keep it open source.
Yeah.
As soon as you put anything
Money behind it.
it just turns
Money
into
Cindy
changes
Lauper,
everything.
if you're listening to this, you said it back in the day. Thank you so much, Erica.
Thank you.
We are so honored to have you here.
It was my pleasure. I love talking about this, and especially on higher level conversations aren't always had. So it's fun to be here.
Well, here's to many more.